Let's do it. Who's going first, me or you?
Hey, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Since you're going to be talking most of the time. My name is James Bryant. I'm here with Jerome Myers, and we're just going to give a brief introduction of myself and Jerome, why we like multifamily and what our approach is. Really looking at our three big mistakes. Jerome may say that they're his mistakes, but we're all in this together. And so if I'm working with him, I'm his partner, and there's a mistake, it's on both of us. And then we're also going to take some time to do question and answer. And so if you want the slides, you have to request it at this point. So we have no problem sharing that. And just in general, our promise is we're going to give you all we can in the hour that we have. And then we're going to tell you where you can go if you want to get more help or need more resources. We're truly here to be a blessing and to help those that are walking along this journey that are moving forward in real estate investing and in life. So a little bit more about me. I'm a managing partner here, and I am the leader of Better You for You, which is a life coaching and motivational brand firm that I'm the founder and CEO of. I have a really deep focus on altruistic investment, as well as making sure that we align our values with our money and our time. So it's not just about saying what we're going to do, but it's putting the resources, including our time and money, behind it. I am a passive real estate investor. I'm an investor in over 70 units across the Mid-Atlantic. And that includes units in Richmond, Virginia, and in North Carolina. I'm part of a fantastic group called Dream Catchers, and I'm the significant thought leader on that. And in terms of my qualifications or certifications, I have a doctorate in civil engineering, and I'm a professional engineer, and I'm a professional licensed life coach. Jerome? We can't hear you.
I've been talking away, and so we've got to update the slides. We added a new certification in, and we'll get that fixed. Why multifamily? Why now? So I would guess the majority of you are here because you have some interest in investing in multifamily, if you haven't already. And maybe you don't fully understand or comprehend the situation that we are in the United States. So there's a workforce housing crisis. The teachers, police officers, firefighters, retail workers are having a really hard time finding affordable places to live. And in fact, when they do find places, the places that they're living in are the best product that 40 or 50-year-old properties have to offer. Sometimes they're renovated and brought up to current standards, but oftentimes they're neglected by the current owners because they're keeping rents compressed, and because the rents are so low, they don't have the money to invest in the properties in order to make the capital improvements necessary to keep the property moving along. There's a real opportunity for investment in multifamily, and I think it's probably the only asset class that works with opportunity zones without something being built new. If you come in and buy a multifamily property the right way, you can go in and make the right investments in it and qualify for the opportunity zone tax credit benefits. For us, multifamily housing can't be outsourced. And I guess no housing can be outsourced. I know there's a lot of people raving about Airbnb, but the fact of the matter is people need a long-term place to live. And I don't know many people that are bouncing from one Airbnb to another. And so in the end, they've got to come home. And there's been a shift in ownership. Baby boomers are reducing their footprint. And so they're going in and renting places. For some of them, they're in a really good place and they're able to rent, luxury product. But there's a lot of folks who didn't do a good job saving. And so when they go into retirement, they're looking for something at, a discount or affordable. The other end of that spectrum is the millennials and the other folks that are coming out of school now with a lot of student debt, which is preventing them from qualifying to get into a mortgage. And those challenges are pushing those two big groups into multifamily property. The people in the middle, Gen X and the I guess the matures on the other side of the baby boomers, but Gen X in particular, if they're renting while they're still Gen X, then they're probably going to continue to rent because they've decided that ownership wasn't part of their strategy after being established and, setting up families and having kids. We really like multifamily because we think it's a great way to buy a business that's a bankable investment. And so when we think about a multifamily property, we're thinking about buying a business that has real estate attached to it. You can see the past cash flows, you can project cash flows, you can do a lot of things with pretty reliable certainty. Um, and so the other piece of it, James mentioned the altruistic investment. We call it doing good while doing well. And so we want to improve the communities, not just take from the communities. I think there's a lot of folks who are more pure capitalists than he or I am. And in that sense, they just want to take all that they can, maximize their profit. For us, we want to improve the community because we feel like if you treat the property well and the residents well, then the property will turn around and treat you well. So about me, if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that. If we're not already connected, just search Jerome Myers. For me, this is a mission and maybe even ministry. So my goal is to free 100 people from work they're not passionate about. And the goal is for them to have streams of income from owning multifamily property. That's what the 1,000 Doors and 100 People financial independence movement is all about. I'm the host of the Dreamcatchers podcast. When I'm not doing that, I'm doing something related to real estate full time. We've grown a portfolio to approximately 90 doors in the Mid-Atlantic. And although it makes me uncomfortable to say it, Myers Methods is what we've created or cultivated as our approach to buying properties. James coined the phrase after it was probably our second deal. It was like, we actually have an approach, we have a way of doing things, and we need to systematize it and be able to share it with other folks. And so this is an outgrowth of that. Before I left corporate America, I built a $20 million division. I was employee number 2. We had $0. By the end of the year, we had about 175 employees in that group, and we billed a little over $20 million. Went to a lot of school, got a lot of different certifications. I'm a general contractor, project management professional, Six Sigma black belt, professional engineer, got an MBA somewhere in there along the way. If you want certifications to give me some credibility, I probably can check the box with anybody in the field. So how I got started. Back in, I guess it was the early 2000s, me and Duran were sitting on this very stoop. It's 1507 Cunningham Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we started adding up all of the revenue that was being made by the person that owned it. And it added up to about $700,000 a year. And we never talked to the person or people. We never saw them. We knew the management office was there, but that was kind of the extent of our understanding of multifamily investing. One thing that I learned before I moved off campus into these apartments was that I wanted to decouple my time from money. I had a job in a fitness center, and it was like 4:30 on a Sunday, and I closed up early. And somebody came over because they wanted to get a quick run in. And my supervisor came and found me. He's like, "What are you doing? Why'd you leave early?" And I was like, "Well, nobody was going to actually get a workout in that amount of time that was left." He was like, "Well, we pay you for your time. We don't pay you to think." And it was then I was like, there's no way that I want to live a life where I have to be in a specific place at a specific time in order to get compensation. And so I started off on this quest to figure out, how can I decouple my income from my time? And this seemed like a logical next step. The issue was, I didn't know how to do it. And then I didn't know how to learn how to do it. And I didn't even know who did it, right? So the management company was front facing. There was a manager who sat in the office, but I knew that that person didn't actually get to collect the money at the end of the month, or at least put it in their bank account. And so for me, it was like, how do I become this person? How do I become a owner of an apartment complex? And we went on a really long journey, and I never really, was able to find that answer. And so when I left corporate America after laying people off a couple of times, year after year, I was like, this doesn't work. I've got to do something different. And so we started off on this approach. And so I walked into a bank, and they told me, yeah, you don't have any experience doing this. You got to go do something else. I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And so I was like, I got all these certifications. I have money. I've got a credit score, all these different things. And at the end of the day, nobody was willing to give me a loan to go buy this apartment building. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go do something else. And so I started fixing, flipping houses, and eventually that led me into getting my first apartment deal. It took me 11 months to get to closing on the property that I was trying to buy originally, but we finally got there. In that process, we developed these 4 steps. It's find it, fund it, fix it, and flip it. And you'll hear people, there's a bunch of different variations. I imagine that everybody's process is pretty similar, but I think we've figured out some pretty unique things. And so for the folks that are on this call that are actually going through the multifamily class, we've been getting extremely positive reviews on it. And, we're a quarter of the way through. It's a 13-week course, and we're going to take some time off for the holidays and come back on after, the first of the year and finish up in the first week of February. But the big thing for me is just being able to share this with other people. I think the biggest difference between what we do and what other people do is we want to actually help people get in position that they can go do their own deal. This isn't about luring people to put their money in our deals and then they're stuck being a passive investor, because at the end of the day, you don't really get credit for being a passive investor. Like, that doesn't count as experience. What counts as experience is when you're the lead, when you sign the loan. Like, those are the things that actually get you credibility in the marketplace. And so, as we go through our deals, we're looking for deep value add properties where, we can grow rents 100. We really like to be able to grow rents $150. We feel like when we can do that, there's real opportunity to force appreciation and make a huge impact. We invest in the Carolinas and Virginia primarily. The other places that we're going to be open to invest in is where folks who've actually went through our training are interested in investing. So, like, I saw some folks on, one person in particular that I invited, she's down in Texas, right? And so if it's really hard to get in the Texas market if you're an outsider, but if we have somebody with boots on the ground that actually understands what we're looking for and how we do it, to me, it seems like a natural synergy, because that market is so hot and people are making such large, I don't want to call it revenue, but there are some people who are actually getting rich off of this. And I don't like painting that picture of this is some get rich quick scheme, but there are people who are leaving their jobs, replacing how they pay their bills, and have the ability to live a financially free life. And it's my aspiration to help other people do that. So let's jump into my mistakes. So I've got 3 of them I'm going to share with you guys and try to cram them all in. We're about 20 minutes in, so I think we're in a really good position, right? So my first mistake was not networking intentionally. So, I walked out of an engineering job, project manager job, whatever you want to call it. And so I didn't really have a true, strong multifamily investing network. What I was doing was it was totally unrelated, right? And so the other pieces that were tied to me is I avoided telling people what I was doing. Like, it was a secret. I didn't want any pictures of myself on the internet. That was a secret. Like, everything about what I was like, multifamily or real estate investing's best kept secret. And the reality of the situation is that's a losing strategy, guys. If you don't want people to know what you're doing because of whatever reason, then nobody's going to bring you a deal because they don't know to bring you a deal. Everybody should know what you're doing. Everybody should know what you're looking for, because when things come up, you want them to actually think of you. They can't think of you if they don't know. And so getting comfortable with yourself and sharing yourself with the world is the most important thing that you can do after you have some education, right? Because you don't want people to have the opinion of you that you don't know what you're doing. I wasn't surrounded by like-minded people, right? So I spent a lot of time with people who had no interest in real estate. And so if a person has money but isn't interested in investing in real estate, they're not going to help you close a deal, right? Because they don't understand the asset class. The other thing that I did wrong was not spend time with people who were actually doing deals, right? So if I'm looking to do a deal, but I'm not with people who are doing deals, I'm not likely to get a deal because I'm not in the right place for those conversations. Um, I didn't have spend time or know people who were investing outside of their 401k. Everybody I knew had this magical goal of maxing out their 401k if they were saving at all. A lot of people that I knew weren't even saving at all. What they were doing was spending every penny that they made so that they could live this amazing lifestyle and prove to people all around them that they were doing really well. And the reality is they were one paycheck away from being on the street because they didn't have any money in savings. They weren't saving anything for retirement, and they didn't have any investments. And so if they didn't have any investments, how are they going to help me go spend $1 million on buying an apartment building? Like that part just didn't work. And so I had to adjust that piece of my network. So my dad was a soldier. He was in the Marines for a few years, and then he got out, went back to New York, and then he joined the Army. And so my mom met my dad while he was in the Marines. She was in the Navy, and they have this like crazy love story. But anyway, like they ended up getting married, and I was born. We went back to our trailer in Spring Lake, North Carolina, and I lived there for like 3 months. And then my dad made like the major financial accomplishment of his life. He bought his first home. And so I was able to live in that same house for 18 years. And he did that by going on a tour to Korea twice without us for 1 year. Anyway, long story short, I never had doctors, attorneys, lawyers, engineers, accountants. I had none of those people coming to my house for dinner, right? Like we were a working class family. We had enough to do many of the things that I wanted to do. But there wasn't a whole lot for investing. There wasn't a whole lot for savings. And at the end of the day, I just didn't know what that was, right? So I went off to college, and many of my friends in college were first generation college graduates, right? And so the ability to grow or build wealth was in our hands. We didn't have our parents and giving us money or that kind of stuff. And so when I looked around my network, it was like, oh man, I don't really know anybody that's got $100,000 that they can invest outside of their 401k or any of these other things. And I imagine a lot of folks like that are on this call are in the same situation. And so I had to make an adjustment for that. I had to get really intentional about the people I was spending time with, because the fact of the matter is, if I didn't do that, then the thing that kind of prevents the most people from getting into multifamily was access to capital, because you've got to make the down payment. Even though your bank is your biggest partner, because they're bringing somewhere between 65 and 80% of the money that you need to close, that other piece of the money you've got to figure out. And with multifamily, the transactions get so big that there's very few people who can actually write a check for the down payment on their own, especially starting out. So we needed to figure out a way to pool resources and grow folks together. And so I changed the places where I was spending time. I changed the people who I talked to on a daily basis. And I needed to get those folks that I spent time with aligned with the things that I was trying to move to. And so, RIA, the focus was off when I went to those meetings, right? Everybody was talking about single family homes. They were talking about creative financing so that you can get in a deal with no money. And I was just like, that seems really, really, really complicated when this approach is really straight line. And I get it. If you don't have access to capital, then you need to do something different. But what if there was a way that if you were like super knowledgeable, you had somebody to guide you along the way, and then there were other people who were interested in what you were doing and already investing outside of their 401k or inside their 401k, but through a self-directed mechanism, that you could make a ecosystem where all of that stuff was in one place. the people who offer those promises are asking well, I don't know, so on average, but I've heard 25 to 40 grand for a lot of the coaching programs. And you'll get access to our ecosystem. And then if all you have to do is get a deal and you get all your money back. I think that all of those statements are true. The thing that I think gets left out in that pitch is, for the vast majority of people, they're not going to take down a $5 to $10 million deal in their first opportunity. And so they're not going to get their money back in the time frame that they think they're going to get their money back. And so what I wanted to do was create an ecosystem that can take down those bigger deals, but is also interested in taking down those deals that have a recourse loan, but the ambition is to take down those deals, force the appreciation, and then refinance out into a recourse loan and stair step that way. Oh, and then Bigger Pockets. Like, I know Bigger Pockets is the place where most people go to learn about real estate, but there isn't a focus on multifamily. And so, I ran out of options. I was like, I've got to do something different. The other thing that I did that was a huge mistake, and I learned a ton, but it wasn't efficient, right? I consume, and I still do. I made it a habit over the past 3 years. And so I'm still running in that habit. I can consume 40 hours of content a week on the low side, right? And so it's always this podcast or this book or this video, whatever it is. And what happens is you just kind of, depending on who you are and what you're doing, you can overeat, right? And you don't know how to make heads or tails out of all the information that you're taking in. And for me, that was like a huge struggle, because I wanted to get answers to all the questions, because I never wanted something to go wrong in our deals because I didn't know something I was supposed to know. That was a huge struggle for me. And then depending on which guru you're listening to, you get conflicting points of view. Oh, you should go big or go home. Oh, no, you should try a smaller deal and then, work your way up to the bigger deal. Whatever the point is, there's a point and a counterpoint, and everybody's putting their flag in the ground and saying, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you should do this too, because it worked for me. I'm not sure that at the end of the day, there is a right or wrong answer. But what I am sure of is that having a clear direction is the most efficient way for you to move through the continuum. And you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels, trying to figure out who you want to listen to, who you want to follow. But at the end of the day, getting direction instead of just exploring will become extremely important in order for you to be successful in the end. And this one was probably the one that hurt the most, right? Because I'm consuming all the content, and then when I get done with the content, I'm putting it into action. But if there's something that I had a question about, I really didn't have anybody to ask, right? If all my mentors or all of my coaches are virtual, then, and I haven't engaged with them in any formal way, there's no way that I can actually say, hey, Michael, because Michael Blanc's one of the guys that I listen to, what about this? Like, until I was on the show a couple of months ago, I had no idea, who Michael really was. Like, all I knew was he does this podcast and he's got this software to analyze deals. But I didn't really know who Michael was. And so it's like, all right, I'm listening to this guy, I'm listening to Joe, I'm listening to John Casman, I'm listening to all these different people, and they all have a perspective on how things should be done. And a lot of them are focused on a slightly different niche. But when I bring it all together and put it together, there wasn't one person I could go to who had the experience, right? And say, hey, what about this? Or what do you think about that? Or should you do this? I just didn't have anybody in my circle that had that experience. And it really felt eerily similar to when I was sitting on the stoop with Duran and we were asking, well, how do we get there? The other questions that I wanted to be asking people, do I understand this properly? Or is there something I'm missing? What else should I consider? What should I do next, right? You get to a certain point and you get stuck because you don't really know where to go. And that was terrifying at points, but we figured out how to get through it. If I exhausted my network, unfortunately, there's been new people to come in. I've been fortunate enough to attract people into the network. But when I got to a place and it's like, who can help me close this deal? And I'm actually still struggling with Technology Row, right? Just trying to make sure that we pick the right team to actually deliver that new construction 120 unit deal here in Greensboro. Um, it's a question that I continue to ask myself on a daily basis, because I don't want to do something that just ends my career. But by the same token, like, I've got these extremely ambitious goals that I'm working through, and trying to make sure that I have the right pieces in place to make sure I don't get hurt along the way is core for me. Um, does anybody know more about this than me? And so James and I both pride ourselves on being competent. And so if there's somebody out there that has a better command of the subject matter than I do, I want to sit at their feet and learn everything I can. Like, the ego goes completely out the window, and it's like, okay, how can I know what you know? And but searching for those folks, that 40 hours of content from the podcast and that kind of thing, like, those folks came, well, they were pretty rare and far between. But at the end of the day, I knew for a fact that, hey, we've got a pretty solid footing. And if I don't do anything else, this is what I know. If we mess up, if we fail, it will not be from a lack of effort, right? It will be because we didn't know something that we didn't know. And so I was trying to pin up that thing that scared me. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't have somebody to help me walk through it. And so as I've gone through the continuum and I've watched stuff trade in the market and I've seen people send deals, I've learned a few things. And the biggest thing I've taken away is I watch a lot of people buy bad deals just to say they had a deal, and they're beating their chest and they're proud of themselves. And they don't realize that they've created a situation that they are not going to win. Like, they can't win. Mathematically, it's impossible for them to actually get out of this without losing money on the backside. And the great thing about multifamily is probably one of the most challenging things. You can't unbuy the bad deal, right? So if your cost basis is too high, just like with any stock, the fundamentals of the deal don't work. At the end of the day, you're going to get caught. And so you can delay it by not selling. But at some point, it's going to catch up with you. And so if I can help people prevent that, I will feel like I've done a good job, because the last thing I want to do is for people to get into a deal, lose money, and then they say, hey, real estate doesn't work, when I've got plenty of social proof that people are making a great deal of money in this asset class and in real estate in general. So with all that said, what do we do? Because I knew that there were other people in my network who were interested. It was like, I'm going to scratch my own itch, because nobody else is actually doing this for me in a way that I think is reasonable, right? I didn't think $40,000 to get into the network was reasonable. For many people, it would be, it's cost prohibitive. And I know there's some filtering going on in that, but I don't think we need to filter at that degree. So I scratched my own itch. I wanted to create a place of a group of diverse but like-minded people, right? People who are interested in financial freedom, people who wanted to make positive impact in the community. I wanted to create a place where we have some curated content so people could follow along on the journey instead of having to go to, I don't know, the 20 different podcasts that I listen to on a weekly basis. I wanted to create a safe harbor for people to ask general questions. Now, I don't expect people to get a full debrief on a deal that they're working on in our community, but what I would like for them to do is to get pointed in the right direction or get pointed to a resource if they don't have one for what they're working on. I want to create a place where people can do deals, right? So you got a deal, you want to trade it. I want to have a group of people who are ready to buy that deal. And I think about like Brad Sumrock and some of the other apartment groups that are out there where people will bring the deal to the group so they can take it down. And I envision something similar to that in our community. Potentially find partners. This is a team sport. I don't know many people who are successful at doing this alone. I know that I wouldn't be where I am, even though I feel like I'm 3 years behind where I should be. I wouldn't be where I am had I not had the folks step up from high school, from different boards that I was on, from college, and say, hey, Jerome, we believe in you. We want to continue this journey. We want to take down more deals. We want to create more passive income for ourselves. And we believe that you can help us do that. And I want that for other people too. So, if we're trained in the right, we think about the deals the same way, we use the same language. I believe that, we can be, great partners, great teammates, and just go off and make the world a better place while making money doing it. I want people to come in and be able to encourage other folks, right? For me, it doesn't matter whether I have this success or you have this success. I like celebrating successes because it confirms to me that it's a real thing, right? If I know that James just got, a big check from an exit, then I know that there's potential for me to get a big check from an exit. And because he shared that with me and I can actually go out and talk to him about how he did it, it just makes it even more real for me. I'm big on, envisioning what you want to see and then going out and touching it. And that makes it real. And then a final connection is when it manifests for you in the way that you saw it. I wanted an exclusive group, but not exclusionary, right? I want to separate ourselves from the people who are talking about doing it, but their actions don't align with their conversation, right? I want people who are all the way in on it and they're not only talking the talk, but they're walking the walk. So we created something where you got to pay basically $1 a day in order to be a part of it, but we feel like we're adding tremendous value to you. We're speeding up the way that you get to your deals. We're curating content with you, so on and so forth. The other thing that it does is there's a coach that James and I both listen to, and he said, or it was one of his guests, he was like, the transformation happens in the transaction. So when you actually allocate the resource to what you're doing, then you actually are on your way to doing something. And so for me, it's like, okay, I couldn't or wasn't willing to allocate $40,000 to get in the deal, but if there was another alternative that made sense, then I probably would have went down that path because I didn't want to do it all by myself, right? I didn't want to be a lone wolf. The other thing, people pay attention when they start paying for stuff. When somebody gives you something for free, it's kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. I'll do something. I might not do something, but at the end of the day, I'm in this community, so I'm actually making progress. When you actually are making a payment for something, it's kind of like your gym membership, right? You get that reminder if you want to got a gym membership, you get that reminder that you're paying for the gym, whether you go or not. And so it pulls you back in. If you're a penny pincher like me, it pulls you back in. It's like, okay, well, I got to go to the gym if I'm paying for this thing. It separates the committed from the considering. For me, it confirms that we're adding value. The past 6 months or so, I've been on this this kick of, if I'm adding value, then compensation will follow. Because if we're not adding value, then you're not willing to pay for it, right? And so for me, driving home the point that, hey, this is valuable, people are staying in it because we're creating value. And for me, that piece was the confirmation. And then the other thing is you don't want to be in what we call pitch fest. And so it wasn't until I started going to multifamily conferences that I learned what a pitch fest is. And so basically what that is, if you don't know, is when you go somewhere and oftentimes you pay or they offer you to go to the thing for free. And it's a seminar and all they do is spend time trying to convince you to buy the next thing. And for me, I was like, this is insane. Like, I paid to come to this conference for you to sell me this after this, after this. And in the end, I imagine a lot of these products will actually add value, but I think there's a better way to do it. And so what I want to do is actually create this community, or we've created this community, but invite more people into this community where we don't have to worry about that. And when stuff shows up, it's because we're actually using it and not because somebody solicited us to say, hey, you've got this community. Why don't you bring this resource in and present it to them as something to buy? So for me, we promised that we would give you opportunity to get more resources. And so that for me is, the closed Facebook group. It's myersmethods.com, and you can sign up for the closed Facebook group. For the people that are in the Facebook group, we're going to do a 15-minute call. We're going to do an online course for anybody who wants to get through the stuff, but not at a specific time. They want to log on. And so that's going to be available at the beginning of next year, which is not very far away. And then in order to get into one-on-one coaching, because I've had a lot of people reach out recently, it's like, what's your coaching program? How do you do that? What I've learned is that early on, coaching isn't the right answer for a lot of people. And so since we've created the course, they can get a tremendous amount of value out of the course. And then on the backside of that, if they still need help or they still want somebody to walk through the process with them, then it actually makes sense for us to connect in that way. And so we're going to do that and make some slots available at the end of February. And so what I would like to do now is open up the floor for questions. And James, I don't know how we're going to manage that because there's quite a few people on the call, but I just like to open up for open discussion. Hopefully you guys got some value out of what I shared. And I imagine some of you may be struggling with some of the same things. But the one question that I have for you, if you're not getting the results that you want, or you're not in the place you want to be, is your way working? And are you open to trying something else?
If someone has something they want to say, you can either unmute yourself or use the chat box function. Oh, we have a chat. So this is from Myra. Jerome, when did you know that you were ready to scale or to scale up, your business and what you were doing?
Myra, I'm so glad you joined. Thank you for taking time. So Myra is a big deal. And I won't dive into her resume, but she reached out. I connected with her through LinkedIn, and she went to Alcorn State, and we are going to meet at the Celebration Bowl this year. A&T is playing Alcorn State, and we're going to beat their butts like we did the first time. And now let me get off the soapbox, right? So, Myra, the long and the short is I don't know that you ever know that you're ready. But I think what you end up with is this place where it's like, okay, I'm doing this full time or I'm not. And if not, then I better do something different. The only way that you are going to have, I think, how can I say this? I'm trying to be politically correct, but I don't just do that well. So let me just talk, right?
Just talk.
Right. Your scale is a matter of your influence, right? And so if you're going to be significant, if you're going to have tremendous influence across the generations that you want to have influence over, scale is the answer. Doing things at a very, very small level only allows you to impact a very small group. I've got this vision where there won't be any more Jerome and Durans sitting on stoops because they know that there are people in the marketplace that are willing to help them. And it doesn't cost so much for them to get in, understand whether or not this is for them or not, and then go do it, right? And so for me, the mission got bigger as I realized more and more that one, I could do it, right? So I did a deal. It didn't go exactly as planned, and no deal ever will. I've accepted that. But when I did the deal, it gave me confirmation that, hey, I can actually do this, even though I didn't have somebody that I could reach out and touch. I don't want people to go through that last piece, right? I want people to have somebody they can reach out and touch that can give them the confirmation that, hey, this is what is next, or this is what we can do. And for me, that is the reason why I'm going to scale. It's the reason why you've seen my videos. It's the reason why you see pictures of me. It's the reason why we've created this community. Like, all of those things are aligned only so that we can help people move to this new space. And who knew 6 months ago how different things would be today if I hadn't taken that chance. The other thing is, I don't believe that you have to have everything in front of you in order to be successful at doing this, right? So if I'm driving from Greensboro, North Carolina to San Diego, California, I can't see all the way across the country, especially if I'm driving at night. And a lot of this, if you're doing it on your own, is driving at night. What we would like to do is become the GPS in the system, right? So, your exit is coming. There's a disabled car ahead. There's a speed trap. We want to actually help people navigate this journey so that they don't end up in a space where they run off the road, or they get stuck in a place that they're not supposed to be, or they get lost and then they never do anything. Like, that is the game.
So another question, Jerome, is, and this is Cherie Francis, beyond the initial closing, what were some of the pitfalls that you came across in your first project, i.e. construction, money, hiring people, those kinds of things?
Hey, Shari. Is it cold in New York today? So the first thing was we didn't get permits, right? And because we didn't get permits, that ruined everything else. And in order to get permits, you got to get drawings. In order to get drawings, you got to have somebody to measure stuff. And so it snowballed from there. And we've recovered. We were able to buy that property with average rents at like $695, and now we're renting stuff for $1195. But when we got into it and realized we didn't do the things that we could have done prior to closing in order to be positioned to hit the ground running on the backside, it's like, well, this will never happen again. And we had the conversation about what we should do prior to us doing it, but we just didn't do it. And for me, that was, silly.
Yep.
Why didn't we do it? We didn't do it because all of my partners weren't on board with what the next thing to do was. The person in particular who was leading the construction effort decided that we would just figure it out once we get into the deal. And I am vehemently against waiting until we get into the deal to figure stuff out now.
And this is another reason why Jerome included in the slide that, we're open to partnering with folks, but we want to make sure that we're aligned. And we know that if you go through the Myers Method course, that you'll be aligned with our values and the goals that we have. Jerome talked about, 1,000 people, 1,000 units, 100 people. My vision is to make a positive impact on over 500 families by my ownership in over 500 units by January 2024 is what I'm looking for there. And so we all have our own little goals, but they're all still that, aligned with doing well while doing good. And so we have two questions. I think Matthew is first. So he says, I know for myself, I've struggled with digesting so much information and not taking any action. Now I'm just trying to position myself in groups where I can add value. How do you qualify the groups or people to work with?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about, do we have aligned values, right? Mm-hmm. And then if we have aligned values, do we have aligned goals? If we have aligned goals, do I have something that's missing? If I have something that's missing, would I enjoy working with these folks? Because this is the main reason why I left corporate America. I wanted to pick the people that I work with. And so if I would enjoy working with the folks, then I inject myself. If not, then I don't. And at the end of the day, I probably could work with anybody that I wanted to, but the reality of the situation is I am extremely particular about who we work with and why we work with them. Because if I don't do that, I end up in a place where I'm not happy with life.
Yep. And then, so another question, Richard Berryman asked, can you give it an example of how you all have helped folks successfully navigate deals or provided a successful partnership to date? I'll start that one. And, it's really, when Jerome invested in his first multifamily deal that he talked about, now Jerome and I have been friends for, at that point, maybe 10 years. I've tried to support him in different things that he was doing, but the one thing that was difficult for me to ever part with was my time and my money. So, he would have different things to do, but when he started looking at multifamily investing and presented the deal summary to me and talked about the partnership, I thought it was something that would be able to, one, build generational wealth, but two, just allow us to be able to make a difference and an impact in the community. So I partnered with him on that one. And then when we found the first project in Greensboro, I partnered as well and came in as a key principal on that one, and began to develop a relationship, with the bank, and where I have that relationship now. So if I have a deal that's coming through the pipe, I would be able to successfully connect with the bank and make things move in that direction. Whereas it's an example of how using our method, getting different people to be key principals, bringing them in and supporting them, allows them to establish that financial track record for those kinds of relationships that they have. Jerome?
Yeah, I think of Devin's first deal, right? Devin's one of my closest friends. And on his first deal, we closed a property with $400,000, well, almost $400,000 worth of equity, right? For some people, that doesn't seem impressive. For other people, they're like, how in the world did you get $400,000 worth of equity? Well, we bought a deal off of LoopNet that was marketed at 1.5.
Yeah.
We bought it for 1.375. We got some closing concessions. And when the appraisal came back, it appraised at 1.75. And Devin hadn't done anything to make the property any better. He just showed up with a smiling face and
to shake hands,
shake hands and kiss babies like he does. And then we moved on to the next thing. Tiffany came into the program and she wanted a quad. She's like, I just want to get a quad before the end of the year. And, she just finished with a 10 unit that we closed. I can't remember when we closed that one. Sometime this fall. Yeah. And so, that's, a couple of people who didn't have any prior experience, but from a commercial standpoint. And so I didn't say this, and maybe I should, right? If you haven't signed a commercial loan, you don't have experience, period. Right. And so other people who have property are going to have to bring you in. It's just like a fraternity or sorority. You got to get into the multifamily investing club. And there's a number of different ways to do that. But we like the thought of being able to bring people into the space. And it actually excites us when we add a new face to the conversation. So
yeah. Any more questions? Again, feel free to reach out. We want to connect. We want to grow. We want to continue to help people be their best version of themselves. We want to continue to help people to just go after their dreams. And if multifamily investing is part of what you want to do, we're here to help.
Yeah. James, we spend a ton of time talking, but This is the first time that we've actually had this conversation in this space. I mean, you know me probably better than everybody except for Ray. What's your take on the evolution since May?
Oh man.
Yes, Myra, we have deals coming. Of course, we have deals coming every day.
Yep.
They're abundant and abounding.
Yep. There are deals coming every day. We're continuing to evaluate things every day. And so it's pretty cool. The big transformation from May until now is more of just being more outward facing in a sense. These are the discussions that Jerome and I would have every day. We're talking about apartment investing. We're trading podcasts. We have other folks that, we're involved with and invested in. But it was, as Jerome has started to transform and get out of his comfort zone was, and he talked about it earlier, he didn't want his face to be anywhere. He didn't want to be public. He didn't want anybody to know what he was doing. But it's hard to make the connection with people when you're anonymous. And so I think a big piece of this has been, Jerome, your willingness to step up and be out in front and continue to move this thing forward. And like you said, a lot of people have connected with you on LinkedIn or Instagram. A lot of people are now going on their morning walks. I've watched other podcasts and I'll say, I'm going to give this update Jerome Meyer style. And so it's pretty cool to see the impact that you're having just by doing what you do and being who you are. To be clear, these are not just activities that Jerome is adding on. This is part of who he is. Part of who he is wanting to help people. It's part of who I am wanting to help people. And I think that's why we've connected, because our values align.
Appreciate you saying that.
Okay, so we have another question. What are the biggest differentiators from this group versus others that are out there? As I asked, I'd like to go out and share the praises, but want to be clear with what's different. Hopefully this makes sense. Thanks.
I think one, it's being exclusive but not exclusionary. I don't know many groups that are going to let you in without, one, you being like an accredited investor, right? So the majority of the people in my network, or the majority of people who are interested in learning how to do this, don't have $250,000 in income a year, or was it 300 if they're, or 350 if they're married, and over $1 million worth of investable assets, right? So, so they filter it by charging, 5 figures plus in order for you to be a part of their network. And you being a part of their network really just gives you the opportunity to be a passive investor in one of the syndicated deals. At the end of the day, for me, the goal is to help people get their first deal done. I'm, like I said, mentioned Michael Blank before, I'm a fan of the law of the first deal. And so once you get your first deal done, life changes, right? People want to talk to you. You've established yourself as a closer. And if those things align, you're able to go off and get another deal. And it comes faster and with less resistance than the first one.
Yeah, imagine, just tell us the story about once we got the time between closing the first deal in North Carolina and the second. It was pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, it took us about 6 months to get to the next one. So we closed on December 1st or November 30th of the previous year. And then the next purchase we did was in June of the following year. It took us, it literally took me 11 months to do the first one. The next one took, I think it was 70 days from the point where I toured the property the first time and wrote the letter of intent to the day we closed and took possession. And then there was another one and then another one. And so they happen faster and faster. It's just a matter of you getting started and getting momentum. And a lot of people want to push the rock up the hill, but the reality of the situation is once you get to the top of the hill, which is closing the first deal, going down the hill is a whole lot easier.
And those rocks come chase you.
If you get on the wrong side, they will chase you. I think the other thing is our group that we're building, by virtue of who we're attracting, just looks different, right? I go to a lot of other places and I don't see anybody that looks like me. And not to say that it's prerequisite, but for me, it matters because it gives me confidence that a person like me can do this. And I completely agree that it's just wrapping paper. But at the end of the day, just being able to walk in a room, not talking to anybody and looking around and seeing people that look like me matters. It mattered when I was in corporate America, and now I want to create a community where, it matters. And I welcome people from all walks of life because, again, it's just wrapping paper. But when somebody walks into the room, I want them to feel like they belong there. And I can't say that I always feel that way when I go out into some of the other venues. So I think those are the two biggest ones at first brush. We can dig really deep on a bunch of other stuff, but I think, and this one more, Richard, I'm glad you asked that question. I think the other thing that sets us apart, the only other person that does this from my perspective is Rock Leaf. And we talk a lot about mindset, right? We believe that you have to be what you are trying to do and not just it's an activity that you do. And so when it becomes a part of you, there's a transformation that happens, and then you draw people to you. And so for us, we're not looking for everybody, but we're looking to the people who are drawn to the message that we're sharing, because those are the people that we want to do business with. The other folks are great and they'll be successful doing things their way, but we have a very particular intent in our approach. And an outgrowth of that is what we found a lot of the time is the property owners, when we show up, don't look like the residents. And right or wrong, I think there's some cognitive dissonance that happens. And so when the property is challenged, they're okay leaving it challenged because they don't see themselves in the people that are living there.
Yeah.
Whereas when I show up and I see that, I see myself in the residents, and it's not okay for them to live in the condition that they're in when it's on the landlord.
Hey, Jerome, you hear me?
Yeah. What's up, man?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me here.
You made it.
I did. I've been swamped all day, but I was glad I could pop in. You guys are preaching some truth here, and I appreciate your receptiveness to all of us.
I appreciate you making some time. What you got?
Of course. So I was just wondering, obviously I'm very new to what you guys are doing, but I was wondering, what are you looking for in new team members, and what are some of the areas for improvement or the goals that you guys are seeking to improve upon or build upon, obviously not knowing exactly the history of you guys being very new. I feel free to opine on that.
Yeah, I think at the highest level, we just want to attract people who are interested, like our values are aligned. Like at the highest level, that's all we're looking to do, is grow this community with more people who have the same values that we have. And they think about this thing at the highest level the same way that we do. And if that is the case, then there's natural outgrowths from that. But we're looking for alignment of values from the core, and we want to grow the community as big as we can, right? Everybody won't be in the same place. Everybody's not ready to go take down a $1 million deal right now. Even fewer people are ready to go take down a $10 million deal right now. The biggest deal that I've seen done recently was a $52 million deal. Even the smaller group's ready to take that down. But if you're in here, you're immersed in, education and getting to know folks and building relationships. I think that positions you in order to get ready for those types of deals. And so we want people looking for deals. We want people saying, hey, I've got net worth and liquidity, and I want to join in on a deal. We're looking for people who want to actually execute and help out on the team. It just, whatever your interest is, I think there's a place for it. We don't have natural gaps outside of going to scale, as Myra brought up earlier, right? We want to grow this thing really big and be a force to be reckoned with so that we can go all over the country, show up. People have heard about us before we show up, or after the LOI gets submitted and somebody asks, well, can they take this deal down? They say, oh yeah, they're tied to this group. And whenever they write an LOI, if it gets awarded, we will deliver, they will close. And so right now it's about spreading the message. Richard said he wants to go share their praises. I want people to go recruit. And if people go recruit, bring other folks back to this thing, and because they believe in what we're doing, then for me, that will be, complete and total validation that the sacrifice that I'm making by getting out of my comfort zone is worth it to the folks that are out there and either getting started and doing their first deal, getting their next deal, but trying to do it more efficiently or more effectively. Then all this is worth it for me. Does that make sense?
Got it. I appreciate it. It does. Where would you guys say you are relative to that goal you just stated of scale and nationwide recognition, prominence, and
early.
Okay.
So like all of this is within the first 6 months, right? The goal for the first couple of years was, let's just work on ourselves. Let's build this thing. Let's systematize the way we do things. And once we figure out how to build the airplane and actually run the airplane, then bring other people on board. And now we feel really safe. We've executed on our business strategies, or our business plans. They've worked, and we feel confident that we can show other people how to do the same thing. And so the goal is completely to grow this thing because we think it's robust and sturdy. So we're early in the game. We're looking for evangelists to go out and bring other people into the fold that can add, to the community. But again, we're looking for the right people. We're looking for the people who have that internal fortitude that we speak of and are interested in doing good while doing well.
I appreciate that. Good answer.
Our time's up, man. Clock has hit 0.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
What do you say, James? Get out of here or what?
And we got more things to do. We got more deals to look at. We got some things to review. And we got to get ready to continue to develop and provide great content to our Facebook group and the people in our community.
Great. All right, guys. Well, if you held on, really appreciate you staying through Q&A. Hopefully we'll see some of you guys in the group, and we may do another one of these next month.
Hey, if you guys are interested in being connected with us again for the next meetup, I think I just launched a poll. If you're able to look at it online, if you put your name, your email, we'll make sure that we send you that invitation. Go ahead, Jerome. They can hear you. You can still keep talking.
No. I was letting them concentrate. I can't do 2 things at one time. Yeah, I just appreciate you making the investment of your time. I really hope you guys got value out of it. And if you want to help me, go tell somebody else about what we're doing. And, I'd love to see you guys in the pack. I think we can do something really special. And I agree with you, Richard. I think we can do something really, really, really special.
Absolutely.
You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Richard.
He's doing it for 4. Number 4. Legacy.
Looks like his little twin. All right, guys. Thank you. I'm about to close the poll. All right. That's it. Thank you, everyone.